All right, Nick, let's talk about the Nebraska Cornhuskers coming off of what I would consider a big win, especially after you lose your starting quarterback, have a good performance out of the guy Latif coming in to fill in after him. We've seen some interesting insights in Nebraska and how this program has been built over the last few years. But in a recent press conference, Matt Rhule has come out and stated that now they have the groundwork for this team set and there's a different strategy to recruiting and building this team going forward. I think it's very interesting. I think it'll pay off for Nebraska big time going forward. Before we break all of that down, I'm Andrew, that's Nick, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, Nick, as I alluded to, Nebraska has a new strategy when it comes to the building of this football team. Not necessarily, I would say, a new strategy, but the next phase of the strategy. There was their first part where they, built the team up, got as many people in as possible, but now there is a new part of the strategy being able to be unfolded, and I really think it's going to be great for the Cornhuskers. Let's get into the article. We can talk more about it on the other side. So this is from SI.com. Says, over his first 2 seasons, Matt Rhule worked tirelessly to bring in some of the best high school talent in the nation, with the most obvious win being now sophomore quarterback Dylan Raiola. Raiola has been the only highly touted signee over the past few years, and now it's put Nebraska in a unique position. They can actually be picky. When asked during his weekly press conference about his 2026 recruiting class, Rhule admitted he's only got room for about 1 or 2 more guys. This is very interesting when you look at the numbers when we're going to pull up here in just a second, but 1 or 2 more guys left for this recruiting class. Very interesting for a Matt Rhule team. Because we came in early and felt like we had to flip over everything, Rhule said of his first year on Nebraska's campus. Now we've got a lot of freshmen and sophomores, and we can be very select in the 26 class, getting the difference makers. I think guys we have committed and guys we're trying to get are difference makers. And then we'll see the whole portal world in January. We'll see how that goes. So we all know the beginning of the Nebraska Matt Rhule era, it was all about, developmental guys, getting the base in there, having a ton of high school recruits. Who really even cares about the transfer portal? We get all of the young talent in to build this team up as good as possible. But now we're seeing phase 2. And that phase is very interesting. It is talking about let's be selective. Let's get difference makers in as far as when we're getting recruits in. Let's get guys who are going to, play a specific role for this team. And let's be selective how we go forward. And let's dip our toes into the transfer portal a little bit more. I think that's really interesting. If you want to see the numbers, just how this has, ebbed and flowed over the last few seasons, I think it's very, very interesting. So that leads me to our next graph here. And this shows Nebraska from 2023 to 2026 classes. And we can just see the blue line that is going up and then down is their recruiting numbers. The red line is their transfer portal numbers. I think it's very interesting. You look at the 2023 class for the Cornhuskers, had about 28 guys in there as far as recruits coming in. You look at 2024, a little bit more, about 33 guys in there in that class. Then you see a little bit of a drop-off, about 20 guys in the 2025 class. Now in this 2026 class, remember, Matt Rhule said, only have room for about 1 or 2 more guys in this class. They have 10 recruits committed to this class so far. So that's let's say 12 guys total going to be in this class. A massive drop-off here as far as where they are. But we're not saying that's a bad thing. We're saying they have a ton of young guys on this team. Now they can be more selective and, go after certain players. They don't have to, waste as much time casting a wide net. They can focus in on what Matt Rhule says are the difference makers. And you can kind of see the interesting, ebb and flow of the transfer portal players as well. See, back in 2023, you had about 10 guys come into the portal. 2024, 9 guys. Now 2025, we're starting to see a slight shift. You can kind of see the graphs moving to a cross section here. I think we will see it here with potentially transfer portal guys outranking the recruiting guys in 2026. But for 2025, 17 transfer portal players for Nebraska. So interesting trajectory. Getting the known quantity and transfer portal guys that can be difference makers come in plug in key holes on this team. As far as recruits as well, the same kind of concept. Rather than the wide net, plugging distinct holes on the team, getting the guys that they need for the positions. I think this has been an interesting switch for Nebraska, showing they're going from being that developmental team. They're still a developmental team, but now they're a team that can go after the talent because they know where they need the best players at. I think it's an interesting strategy for Matt Rhule and co going forward. I think it's going to show the best of this team as well. Curious what your thoughts are on all of this, Nick. But before we get to you, Cornhuskers fans, in the comment section below, again, like I said, a great win, especially since your quarterback went down against a tough foe in UCLA. I think, this is a really interesting battle coming up this coming week for the Cornhuskers as far as a big-time game against Penn State. Penn State down a little bit, but still, you get a win over them. That feels good as well. So let us know your predictions for this weekend's game versus Penn State at Penn State. Still could be a tough one. Let us know your final score predictions in the comment section below. But nonetheless, Nick, what are your thoughts on everything here for Nebraska?
Yeah, so when I first heard Matt Rhule's comments, I was a little surprised that he would be kind of blunt about it, right? He was like, listen, when I came here, there were a lot of issues, there were a lot of flaws. I had to totally just give us a baseline of talent, like you mentioned. I just had to come up with something to get a bad Nebraska program, in his words, back to just some sort of normalized level of performance that was acceptable. And I thought, well, that's kind of honest, to be totally fair about it, but maybe a little blunt to be just that forthright. But when you pulled up the numbers and actually looked into the data, he's not wrong, guys. In fact, let's pull up our graphics here, Mize, the two I sent you. Let's get started with the first one here, courtesy of our friends over at True Media, great analytics platform. We love working with them. So this is highlighting the Nebraska offense expected points added per play going back the last 3 years. The top bar, or lack of a bar there, minus 0.12. That was 2023. 0.03 is 2024, and this year was 0.13. So you can say, going back 3 years, this Nebraska offense was on an EPA basis, expected points added per play basis. They were negative. They were a disaster class. In 2024, they just got back to basically zero. They got back to neutral, and this year they're positive. And this is exactly what Matt Rhule's talking about. He said, listen, when he got here a few years ago, there was no talent, there was no strategy, there was no plan. Everything was in total disarray, and he had to totally just configure his strategy to get this team back to a certain level of performance, just a minimal baseline. Forget winning a lot of games, forget being a top 15, top 12 team. He just had to get them out of the dumpster fire and get them back to being a solid team. And in fact, if you look at their passing offense, the numbers look even more striking. And I like to focus on passing because I think that's the more complex element to the offense, right? You could run like a military academy triple option and kind of run your football into some level of efficiency. But passing, it's really bad. You can see only in this year's numbers, that bottom bar graph, are they positive. Both in 2023 and in 2024, they were negative, very negative in 23, only slightly negative in 24. This year, very positive in terms of expected points added per drop back. Again, focusing on the passing side of this football team. And that just speaks to the lack of talent, right? It's one of those things in college football, you should not be negative on an EPA basis on offense. You just shouldn't happen at all. It shouldn't happen in professional, it shouldn't happen in high school. But the reality is, especially in modern football, you should be able to throw it. You should be able to do something with some level of efficiency. Nebraska, when Matt Rhule showed up, was so lacking in talent that they basically had to start from zero, and the numbers back that up. So I get where Matt Rhule's coming from 100%. But I also think it creates an opportunity for Nebraska as well, because as you look into the Big Ten, especially down the stretch run, we got a Penn State team that's kind of trying to figure things out, obviously switching up against an Iowa, or finishing up, against an Iowa team that's good, not great. They got an opportunity in front of them to capitalize some wins, end with some momentum. Obviously, two very tough games, even a down Penn State team on the road, and even getting Iowa at home, no slouches whatsoever. But if they can win both of these games, or if we're being totally honest, if they can split these games, I think it gives Nebraska a lot of momentum as they head into their bowl preparation. And when you look at Matt Rhule's overall strategy with what he's had to do with Nebraska and his rebuild here, and compare it to what he had to do at Temple, at Baylor, I think we all kind of forgot how hard this rebuild was going to be when you consider the competition. Because remember, at Temple, that was the AAC, right? We're talking a group of 5 conference, completely different level of competition. Even Baylor was in the Big 12, which, nothing against Big 12, but we all know SEC, Big 10 are clearly the two best conferences in college football. Big 12 is a distant third, and then ACC right behind them. So again, what he did in the Big 12 and what he did in the AAC at Temple, completely different level, because to get those programs up to a baseline level of talent, that was a lot lower baseline in terms of competitive talent than it is in the Big Ten, right? If we're going to put a 1 to 10 scale on it, baseline level of competency in the AAC means your roster talent is like a 4. In the Big 12, maybe it's like a 5. In the Big 10, you got to get up to like a 7. So again, that's what Nebraska under Matt Rhule has been working up to, and they got there. Now it's about taking the next step. Now they can be pickier and really refine the roster. And this is a really good point here by Matt Rhule. I think it's one of these elements that I keep forgetting about this rebuild, is that because of how bad Nebraska was, number one, and how good the Big Ten is, it's going to be a battle. It's not like retooling, playing for Tulane or playing for Arizona State, where the overall talent that you're competing against is at a lower baseline. So you improve a little bit, you're going to do a lot better in the standings. In Nebraska, they had to improve a lot of bit just to improve a little bit in the standings, and it becomes much more of a battle, and it's a much longer process. I love that Matt Rhule is sticking to his process, sticking to his plan, going into the next phase of it, as you pointed out. I think it's a great sign for Nebraska. I'm excited to see how they finish out the year. But overall, as much as this year's been up and down in a lot of ways, one thing is for certain: Matt Rhule is clearly the guy to lead this turnaround, to get this program heading in the right direction. He has a plan, and he is executing on it. Now, whether it will result in national championships or Big Ten championships, time will tell. But I think this is the first time in 15 years, maybe since Pelini, maybe even before Pelini, if we're being honest, that this Nebraska program has a clear strategy that they're trying to execute, and they're working to get it done. Credit to Rhule, and I'm excited to see how it all turns out.